So at this point, you've gotten into your Bible app, or you've opened your Bible to Matthew chapter 5. We're still in our Patriots of the Kingdom series talking about topics from the Sermon on the Mount. This morning I was kind of conflicted as I went through, and I had looked at my sermon earlier, and I had thought about it's going to be about anger, and thought about titling it Uncomplicating Conflict. And yet that's difficult, isn't it? Because conflict is difficult. Instead, if you like to write titles to sermons as you take notes, the title of this sermon is Choosing Righteousness Over Rightness. Choosing righteousness over rightness. Have you been angry at all this week? Been angry? Whether you're watching the news, or maybe a coworker, maybe an employee, maybe a family member, maybe your spouse or a son or a daughter, maybe a classmate. Maybe you just got angry when you were driving on the road and someone cut you off. Maybe you got angry this morning because you couldn't get into the Zoom meeting. You didn't have the password. I'm sorry about that. I apologize. Anger is a huge problem in our society. It's huge. And over the months of being in quarantine and lockdown, and we can't do what we want to do, we're even more easily angered. Christian counselor Larry Crabb once said that anger management is a shockingly underdeveloped skill in our society. And I think that's also true in the church. It's so easy to get angry. Now, I don't want us to be confused with talking about righteous anger or indignant anger as Jesus was when he went into the temple and he flipped over the tables of the money changers. No. Maybe it's just for me, but my anger usually comes, I wish it was always righteous indignation and anger, but it usually comes from my impatience or my unrealistic expectations of others, or my arrogance that everyone should know exactly what I'm talking about because I know exactly what I'm talking about. Anyone ever said to you, it's so easy, just do X, Y, and Z? Everything's easy to the person who knows exactly what they're talking about. Or maybe it's just my own selfishness. I want it done my way. And I want it done my way on my timeline. And if not, then I'm angry. Typically, when I get angry, I look angry. I don't know if you were ever someone who watched VeggieTales, or you had your kids watch VeggieTales. And one of my favorite episodes is the episode Angry Eyebrows, where this angry eyebrows were spreading all over the place. But you can see when people are angry. When I'm angry, I look angry. And after I blow up with anger, I look even more childish than I did at the beginning. You ever seen somebody angry at a machine? Like, you ever looked out your window and someone was maybe trying to mow the lawn and they couldn't get the lawnmower to start and something was going on and they're yanking on that rope and they start to kick it and they start to yell. Or maybe somebody's working on their car and it won't do exactly what they thought it was going to do. I followed everything in the YouTube video for 2012 Honda Civic. Why won't that work on my Honda CR-V? I read a story this week about a little boy who was trying to sell a worn-out old lawnmower. And a preacher walked up, and the boy tried to persuade the preacher to buy the mower. And so the preacher reached down, and he pulled on the rope, and he pulled it again, and he pulled it several more. He put his foot on top of the lawnmower and pulled it as hard as he could. Nothing happened, not even a little bit of a sputter. And the boy told the preacher that he would have to kick the lawnmower while he's saying a few cuss words before the motor would start. Yikes. The preacher said, "Son, I can't do that. It's been a lot of years since I said a cuss word." The little boy replied, "Just keep pulling that rope and it'll come back to you." That's what that looks like. You get angry. You get frustrated when things won't happen when you want them to happen. On some level, most of us battle daily the temptation to lose our cool. It could be something as little as not being able to get the lawnmower started, or it could be frustration with your boss or your coworker or someone in your family. It could be even a deep-seated anger towards a family member or former close acquaintance. God knows us. God knows our hearts. Even if you're not someone who has angry eyebrows, God knows that some of us are angry right now. And his word gives us some instructions about this. Let's pay close attention this morning to Matthew chapter 5, verses 20 through 26. So we can honor God in our lives. So we can be true patriots in his kingdom, even in our anger. Matthew 5, verse 21. You heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who's angry with his brother will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to his brother, Raka, is answerable to the Sanhedrin. But anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of hell fire. Therefore, if you're offering your gift at the altar and they remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First, go and be reconciled to your brother. Then come and offer your gift. Settle matters quickly in verse 25 with your adversary who's taking you to court. Do it while you're still with him on the way, or he may hand you over to the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you may be thrown into prison. I tell you the truth, you will not get out until you have paid the last penny. Before we get started in unpacking some of this, a little patriotic review here. You know, I was in the Army, and if you've ever been, I guess, in the Army, I don't know, maybe it applies to the Marines or Navy as well, but when you have these ceremonies where you'd have to stand in formation, and you'd be preparing for the ceremony, and just over the loudspeaker, over and over again, they would drum the words duty, honor, country, in place of whatever the speaker was going to say the following day. So it's important for us to remember on Sundays, we're preparing our minds to go out and to be representatives of God's kingdom. So it's important that we not just look at anger, but who are we supposed to be? What are our attitudes supposed to be like? What's going to make us happy in this world? Where are the leanings of our heart, our attitude? Where do we lean towards? Are you daily considering being poor in spirit? Are you daily considering mourning for your sin? Are you daily examining whether you're meek towards God, and then how is that affecting your attitude towards others? Are you hungry and thirsty for righteousness, for what's right with God that also makes others right with God? Are you merciful? Are you pure in heart, not seeking for yourself, but seeking for God and for others? Are you a peacemaker? Not a peacekeeper, but a peacemaker. Are you preparing yourself to be ready to be persecuted for righteousness, to be that salt of the earth, that light of the world? God in his wisdom knew the tendency of people to go to the temple and listen to the Pharisees. God in his wisdom knows the tendency of people today to go to church and hear a great message, but not to remember that this anger issue is supposed to be in the context of our identity in Christ. It doesn't just have to do with politics or culture or relationship. It's our very identity, and it affects every other aspect of our lives. Indeed, people will go to church and claim they've seen the face of God and leave and forget anything that he looked like. So in God's wisdom, he cuts straight to the heart. With the affliction that most of us have, especially men, anger, he gets right to testing our patriotism, our commitment to him in an incredible way. A lot of people want to be religious. They want to wear the right religious gear or have a pretty Bible or know more scriptures than anyone else. A lot of people want to say amen. And then, after Sunday's over, live the way they want. And so God gives us this first test of whether we really want to be patriots in his kingdom. Is your salt still salty? Is your light still shining? Or is it hidden under a basket of anger? God begins with, what's your attitude? How do you treat others? Are you a patriot or a pretender? And his first real test has to do with anger. Point number one. People are not lawnmowers. I know this may be some surprising fact for someone out there, but people are not lawnmowers. People are not things. You know, when I read that lawnmower story, I laughed out loud. Maybe it's because I'm a preacher, but I laughed, and maybe it's because when I was a boy, I probably behaved like that little boy and may have thought the same thing. And I tell you, mowing the lawn up here, even on a warm day, every day up here is warm. I grew up in South Georgia where it's hot and sweaty. And not only is it hot and sweaty, but we have something called gnats. If you've never been in a place called gnats, they're little tiny bugs that when you're hot and sweaty, they buzz around your eyes and around your mouth, and they love sweat, and they just get off, and you wipe your sweat, and you also have a handful of gnats. It's disgusting. When you're mowing grass in South Georgia in the middle of August, you might get angry if you have to stop and fix your lawnmower. So I imagine myself cursing and kicking a lawnmower back in my day. When something doesn't go the way I want, doesn't do what I feel like it's meant to do, or doesn't go in my time frame, that just wraps itself around my sinful nature. Heat ensues of words or action. That's natural. When you're dealing with an object that's supposed to behave a certain way, when you've worked in the morning and over the week on how to get all the videos to play on your Zoom broadcast, and they're still choppy, I'm upset with the things. But that can never be how we treat people. Never. In verse 21 here, Jesus says, you heard that it was said. And he says, don't murder because that leads to judgment. He says, you've heard. Someone told you. Someone told you what to think about a thing, and so that's what you thought. But did you consider God's heart? Did you consider your own heart, or just don't do this thing or this thing? What's the heart? What you heard was do not murder. But in verse 22, Jesus says, but I tell you. So Jesus has authority here. He's not going to go and tell anyone, wait, that's wrong. It's okay if you murder someone. That's not right. Murder is still wrong. And he says, don't get angry. He says, be careful. If you get angry with a brother, that makes you subject to judgment. You could be getting yourself into some trouble. You could end up in court here, the small claims court here, not the big one. If you get angry and then you go a little bit further and you say raka. And for us, you know, the reason that word raka stays in there because there's not a great translation of it. It's just a term of contempt. It could be something like, man, what a moron, what an idiot, what a numbskull. Or it could be something as simple as someone says something to you and you say, what are you talking about? That could also be raka. I can't believe that, brother. He says if you go from anger to contempt, you go from small claims court to the Supreme Court, to the circuit court, to the federal court. And he says, worse yet, if you call that brother a fool, and fool here is not meant to be someone who's stupid, but if you look at the Old Testament context, the fool is someone who's useless, someone who's good for nothing. When you call someone a fool, that's a character assassination. You're not just upset with them. You're not just looking at them differently. You're spreading the word that this person is worthless. Wow. When you do that, then he says you're in danger of damning yourself spiritually. Wow. You're in danger of hellfire. That's what some versions say. You know, you may have grown up with sticks and stones. Sticks and stones might hurt me, but words never will. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That's all. My wife's laughing at me. Okay. If you're younger than 30, you don't know any of those kind of things, so maybe you've never heard that. Was that true? Like if you look at the effect that social media has on young boys and young girls, people's images, words that they say, look, from texting, people have committed suicide because of things people have texted them. Yeah. Just from social media things from another person, people have serious issues about their body, about their lives, about their identities. Words, as it turns out, are really dangerous. In James chapter 2, God gives us a great treatment of the tongue and the danger that words have. In Matthew chapter 12, verse 36, Jesus says this, I tell you that every careless word that people speak they shall give an accounting for it in the day of judgment. It's interesting here that Jesus goes from angry to contempt to character assassination. The more angry you are, the more risk, he says, you put yourself in, not the other person. Murder is just the final nail in the coffin that you start building when you get angry at another brother or sister. You started. You can get angry at your car, your lawnmower, your snowblower. You better be really careful with people. You know, one of the great maxims I've ever heard about people is, before you get furious, get curious. Before you get angry, make sure you know what that person actually said or meant, or what did that look mean. Man, we can miscommunicate, not just with our words, but with our physical communication as well. We can miscommunicate by just understanding someone's words or physical communication wrongly. Miscommunication's easy. I would say 99% of issues between people start with miscommunication. But if you jump in and get angry, you're starting down a dangerous road, Jesus says. Anger is a heart issue. Murder is a legal issue. But it's our heart before God that condemns us. Anger issues set us up for issues with God. Issues with God. Not with your husband or your wife or your children. They may have done something and you might not be happy about it. But when you go down this road, you better be careful. It sets you up having a conflict, not with people, but with God. Proverbs chapter 6, verses 16 through 19 says this: there are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him. Haughty eyes. You know what haughty eyes are? Basically arrogance. Like someone says something to you and you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. You hear what I did there? Haughty eyes. You have contempt. You said raka. Haughty eyes. A lying tongue. Hands that shed innocent blood. So not just the innocent blood, but the arrogance that it starts with. A heart that devises wicked schemes. Feet that are quick to rush into evil. Are you quick to listen and slow to speak? Do you get curious before you get furious? Feet that are quick to rush into evil. And a false witness who pours out lies. And a man who stirs up dissension among brothers. You fool. That brother's a fool. Haughty eyes, wicked schemes, false witness that pours out lies, dissension, strife. These are unrighteous attitudes and unrighteous actions. And the Lord detests them all. They are relationship killers. They are unity killers. They are the image of salt that has lost its saltiness. People who spend too much time in anger and carry on. In Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26, God tells us this: in your anger, do not sin. Hey, you might get angry, but you better not sin. You better be careful right there. That needs the part where you cut it off and you think about God. You think about your identity in Christ. And you go back up to those characteristics of a patriot of the kingdom and you ask yourself, am I serious about my sin? Is this person doing something worse to me than I've ever done to someone else? In your anger, do not sin. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. Do not give the devil a foothold on your heart. You could add that in to the end. What does that mean there? Well, some of us, if we've been married for a while in our family of churches, we think, man, if you have an issue in your relationship, you got to talk about it and you can't go to bed until the end. But that's not really the heart of it. It's be careful with your anger.
Right.
Don't let the sun go down on your anger. Do something about it. If you can have that conversation and reconcile, awesome. But you need to go to bed changing your heart, not changing your spouse or changing your kids or changing your boss. It's not about the other person. It's always about you. And that affects every other person in your life. You may not be as familiar with the artist Ice Cube, as I once was. I haven't listened to Mr. Cube in a while, but he has a song that I always remember. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. That was Ice Cube. That's right. That's Ice Cube. Don't look it up. Don't listen to it. But that line right there, it's always about you. You get angry. You have anger issues. You feel justified in your anger. Well, I've told this person what I like and when I want them to do it 1,000,000 times and they still don't do it. I can't believe that. Because I never make mistakes and don't do the things I said I was going to do. That's what you're saying. Man, did you hear about my boss? He did this and did that. I can't believe he did that to your coworker. My boss is a fool. You better be careful. Better be careful. Are you a patriot or a pretender? See, a patriot says, I'm going to live like this. A pretender says, that's a great idea, and I'm going to connect myself to it. Because, man, what a great kingdom. But I don't have to live like that. Better be careful. That's Galatians 5. Can't live this way and enter the kingdom of God. Do you want to be right? Or do you want to be righteous? You have to get your heart in the right place to avoid God's wrath. People are not lawnmowers. And the consequence of kicking a person with your words matters to God.
Right.
Be careful. Point number 2, and my last point. Well, I've had a couple of 2-point sermons because I have really long introductions. Point number 2, this is something for you to consider when you get angry, when you get frustrated, when you're impatient. Maybe it's just something for me to consider because I struggle with impatience, anger. People are God's greatest gift.
That's right.
People are God's greatest gift. Let's look at verses 23 through 26. Think about this. So anger and murder, those are things that we direct against other people because of feelings that we have towards those people, right? And so Jesus says, how do you deal with your anger towards someone? This is what he's about to tell us in verses 23 through 26. What's Jesus' replacement for our anger at other people? Well, verses 23 through 26, he tells us to be far, far more sensitive to others than we are to ourselves. Anger and murder, those are about fulfilling selfish needs that make us feel more than and make others less. Jesus' answer is for you to become less so that God can be more. It's not about the other person. You can't mistake this when you're a patriot in the kingdom of God. Your attitudes and your actions are not about the other people and what they're doing or not doing. It's about your relationship to the king.
Yeah.
And so what does Jesus say? Basically, he says, think more of others than you think about yourself. That's what I've heard a great definition of humility is. It's not that you think less of yourself. It's that you think about yourself less. Verses 23 and 24 here, Jesus says, hey, if you're offering your gift at the altar and you think, wow, somebody has something against me. He says, don't offer the gift. Don't give to God. Whoa! If a brother, you think a brother in the fellowship gave you the stink eye for some reason and you don't know what it was, and you're about to give your offering, he says, put that back in your pocket. And before you give your gift, that's kind of hard with tithing the way we do things now. But the heart is not difficult. Before you give your gift, first, go be reconciled. Then give your gift. He doesn't say don't give your gift. He says be reconciled to your brother and then give with what? A pure heart. It's about God and what's right and righteous before God. For people, for God, people are more important than things. People are more important than the largest amount you've ever given in special offering. If you're planning on giving more in special offering than you've ever given before, because somehow over the last few months, God has blessed you increasingly more than you could imagine. It doesn't say if you have an issue with someone in the church. It says if you think a brother has an issue with you, go work it out. You don't even know. But your need is for relationships with people to really shine through to God. Why is that unique? Because that's what Jesus says. That's what God tells us. That people are more important than relationships. You know, Jesus said, man, you didn't listen to God. He desires mercy, not sacrifice. Where are we with people? If you're not right with people, you're not right with God. That can be difficult for some people to understand. If your marriage is not going well, it's not that your marriage is not going well. You're not right with God.
Wow.
You got to figure out how to do that. If your parenting and your relationship with your kids is not going well, and you think it's their fault, any situation when you say it's them, it's up to them, Jesus is saying you're not right with God. You need to go and get reconciled. Now, we'll talk for just a minute about that later, because reconciliation is not all up to you, but that's got to be your heart. Got to be your heart, not theirs. I don't know if the other person in your family is a disciple or not, is a patron in the kingdom or not, but you're called to be. You're not right with people, you're not right with God, because people are God's greatest gift. Verses 25 and 26 here, Jesus says, all right, if you can't get that, think about it this way. You need to settle matters with your adversary. Whoever that person is, your opponent, your enemy, your adversary, quickly before you get to court, before judgment. Because if you're the one who's found in the wrong, remember, you want to be righteous, not right. Because even when you think you're right, you could be wrong. But if you're always striving to be righteous, you'll be right where you need to be. If you have your heart tending towards these beatitudes, towards mournfulness of your sinfulness, towards mercy, towards loving other people, towards pure-heartedness, you'll be okay, even if you're wrong. But if you go into a situation wanting to be right, wanting to be justified, then how can Jesus justify you? Settle matters quickly with your adversary. If it's you found in the wrong, then you have everything to lose. It says you will not get out of prison until you've paid every last penny. Pay off your adversary, your enemy. Satisfy your enemy. Appease them. Not unrighteously, but if it's your time and your effort and your humility or your finances or something in your house that they claim is theirs, if you're having a border dispute with one of your neighbors and they're saying, one more foot of this property is mine, and no, it is not. I'm going to take you. I don't care what you say. I'm going to jail. You're an idiot. And then you start spreading in the neighborhood about your neighbor who's a moron and who's a fool, who's not as smart as you. And how are you going to take them to court? What happens if you get there and you're the one who's wrong? That's a difficult thing for us, to really be like Jesus.
Yeah.
Who was always right, but for the sake of righteousness, died on a cross. By the way, where people gambled for his clothing.
That's right.
With nothing. How important is being right to you, and how important is being righteous to you? That's always a heart matter. Here's a disturbing thought in here. It doesn't say anything about who's guilty. It doesn't say anything about who's right. It just says settle matters quickly. Whether you think you're right or they're right, just do your best to settle everything quickly. Have a conversation. Try to compromise. Sometimes, even when you have an enemy, matters when tempers flare, right? That's how you get into these suits sometimes, these disputes. Tempers flare.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's your responsibility to get that temper tamped down with God's word, with prayer, with his Holy Spirit, with brothers and sisters around you, praying and fasting and trying to help you here. Because a lot of times, even in worldly matters of opinions or miscommunication can be worked out. But even when they can't, it's your responsibility. If you're a patriot of his kingdom, it's not theirs, whoever they might be. You know, even in the kingdom, it doesn't say, like, why don't you go to your church leader, your family leader first? That's not how it works. There's danger when we can't let go of our anger, when we get over into contempt and then into character assassination. The heart of anger is a huge danger. Do you want to be right or do you want to be righteous? Is your anger stemming from why doesn't anyone else understand me? You're always in a dangerous place when you say that. Because you haven't gone to Jesus, who's gone through far more than you're going through now. Look, maybe there's somebody else that does understand you, but I guarantee you Jesus does. Even in the church, you don't want to just go right to the church. Matthew 18 teaches us that if there's an issue that you have with a brother sins against you, you need to go to them first. Yeah. And then if you can work it out, awesome, reconciliation. If you can't, then God prescribes in Matthew 18 that then you need to get some other person involved or maybe other people involved. Like, let's figure this out. Let's pray together. Let's go to the scriptures. What's righteous here? Yeah. Once was involved in a dispute with two brothers. Really, it was a dispute with one brother. One thought that he was right, and the other wanted to be righteous. And so they couldn't figure it out together. The brother wanted to be righteous, but he didn't want to be somebody's doormat because this person was just grinding on him about all the things he's done wrong and then pulled in some other things besides the main issue that he's done wrong. I'm all for that. I don't think anyone should be a doormat. But that doesn't mean that when someone wrongs me, I lose my temper, I get angry, I start talking about them. You want to be righteous. So even in the church, try to figure it out. If you can't, get someone else involved. We talked about it. It was a matter of opinion. We looked at some scriptures. We prayed about it. And the one brother really wanted to give as much as he could give. And the other wanted to be right no matter what. And so me as a third person, my judgment was, bro, this guy's willing to forgive. He's not willing to take responsibility for things he hasn't done. Are you willing to let go of some things and compromise? No. The brother that wanted to be right ended up leaving the church. Yeah. Very challenging. Yeah. The brother that wanted to be righteous stayed, gave, was a leader, didn't harbor ill will towards the other, still disagreed. Yeah. Man, you better be careful when you think you're right. You want to push? That's okay. God says, all right, we don't have to agree with everything right away. We can get somebody else to help. But even when you get somebody else to help, you're not submitting to their judgment. You're submitting out of humility to God to what's going on right there. You got to be careful when we think we're right. It's far more important to be righteous. Be careful how you treat other people. Proverbs 25 and verse 8 says this, do not go hastily to court, for what will you do in the end if your neighbor puts you to shame? Right. What if it's figured out in court that you're wrong and your neighbor's right? What will you do? How will you react? If you consider before that how much God loves people, and then you ask yourself, how much do I love people enough to be willing to let go of anything? Then you're in the right place. God cares about reconciliation more than gifts. He desires mercy, not sacrifice. God cares about you more than your money or your things or your pride. Look, if we don't let go of our anger, this is what Jesus is ultimately saying here. You need to care about people. You need to love other people. But if we don't let go of our anger, even at the cost of things, the danger, he says, is right before you. If your heart is wrong, if you want to be right more than righteous, it's not the other person who's going to suffer. It's you who will suffer. Maybe you've heard this one. If you go seeking revenge, dig two graves, one for the other person and one for yourself. Yikes. You destroy yourself. Why not be wronged for the sake of your eternal life? What does Jesus say in verse 26? He says, I tell you the truth, not the other person, not your enemy, not your adversary, but if you don't settle it, if you don't give your heart over to the matter being settled, I tell you the truth, you will not get out until you've paid the last penny. What's that talking about? That's hell. That's damnation. When you hold other people to a standard that you yourself can never meet, you put yourself in danger. Better to sacrifice. Better to give. God cares about people more than anything else. People are God's greatest gift. Think about others that way. And if you can't get yourself there without thinking this, then think about yourself that way. God doesn't want you to be in danger of hellfire. God doesn't want you to be in danger of being thrown in prison until you pay the last penny. If you can't love others, then love yourself enough to figure out how to get right with God in your heart and then get around to others. I love the way Jesus gives us options here. Think about others. Think about others. Sometimes you can just get in such a pit that it's hard. Jesus says, if you can't figure that out, then save yourself. And you'll get back to loving others. You want to be right? Or do you want to be righteous? Brothers and sisters, I'm not saying be a doormat. I'm not saying that righteous anger isn't real. I'm just pleading for us to give God a chance, to choose God's way, to value people in our hearts as God does. Look, God says this in Romans. He says he gave his son for you while you were still a sinner, while you were still his adversary, while you were still his enemy. He paid the price. What justifies your anger? Value yourself as God does. He gave his son for you. He loves you. He never wants you to fall. Trust God's word. Go to it. Trust God's spirit. Go to him in prayer. Fast. Pray. When life is good, trust his word. When you feel like you have enemies or adversaries or persecutors, trust his word. Trust God's judgment. It's not always up to you. You may need a third person, as Matthew 18 says, but even in the church, you may need that. Maybe you might still need the legal system if it's outside the church. You might still need those things. But I beg you to think of your identity as a patriot in the kingdom of God. Every action that you take, every eyebrow that you furrow reflects on your king. Seek righteousness over rightness in every relationship, in every part of your life. I'm going to close with this. Romans chapter 12, verses 18 through 21. If it's possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. If there's ever a time it doesn't depend on you, it's how other people feel and how they behave. But as far as it's up to you, live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, my friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it's written, it is mine to avenge, I'll repay, says the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Let's bow our heads. Father, I do not know how to be good. I know that your word tells me how, and I know that you are good. I don't know how. I need you, and I need your word to guide me. I need it, as Psalm 119 says, to be a lamp to my feet. God, please soften my heart, my arrogance, my pride, my impatience, my haughty eyes. Soften my words. Help me to love people more. Help me to care about my own salvation as I think about my dealings with people. Help everyone in this Zoom to consider Jesus, who never made a defense for himself when others hurled insults and falsely accused him, but instead went to the cross to fulfill righteousness. Even though he was right in every situation, every day, every moment of his life, he didn't consider rightness more important than righteousness. I pray our hearts would do the same, and that we would value one another, value people in general, and do whatever it takes, as far as it's up to us, to live at peace. In Jesus' name, amen.